The 8th of May, 1945. North Atlantic. The sea is unnaturally calm, too calm for a war that has swallowed thousands. Inside U-2336, the stale air smells of diesel, sweat, and metal. The hull groans softly as the submarine rises, ballast tanks releasing with a hollow, echoing sigh. Men hold their breath. Some pray. Some stare into nothing. All wait. A radioman, hands trembling, eyes red from sleepless nights, reads the message again, as if hoping the words will change. All U-boats, cease operations. Surface immediately. Surrender to nearest Allied authority. Signed, Admiral Karl Donitz, Hitler's successor, the high priest of the U-boat fleet. And now, its undertaker, Oberleutnant Klaus Bargston, commander of U-2336, stands rigid beneath the dim emergency lamp. 26 years old. Thin from months at sea. A man who has outlived too many friends. He whispers, "It's over," but the words don't feel real. The crew watches him, waiting, pleading, terrified. Bargston nods once. Blow main ballast. The boat shudders upward. For the first time in weeks, a trace of sunlight slices through the periscope lens. It feels like a blade. The Atlantic greets them with icy wind as the hatch opens. Bargston steps onto the conning tower, his greatcoat whipping in the gust. He scans the horizon.
No smoke trails. No destroyer silhouettes. No torpedo wax.
Just water. Endless water. A war fought in darkness has ended in silence. Below him, the white flag, a bedsheet, torn and tied, flutters weakly. The symbol of a navy that once terrified the world now reduced to surrender cloth stolen from the crew's bunks. What happens next will shock you, and 94% of people who click away before the 3-minute mark miss the most unbelievable part. Don't be one of them. Bargston's thoughts drift to the last hours before this order. Just 3 nights earlier, U-2336 had sunk 2 Allied ships off the Firth of Forth, the last Allied vessels sunk in the entire war. A victory that came too late to matter. A victory now stained with guilt. Did those men have families waiting? Did they know the war was ending? Did they die for nothing? The questions hang over him like the Atlantic fog. Below deck, a machinist whispers to another, "Will they shoot us?" "No," the other says, but his voice cracks. No one knows the truth. From the tower, Bargston hears it before he sees it, a faint drone. Growing. Approaching. An Allied aircraft. A lone Sunderland flying boat, its engines roaring across the waves. It circles once. Twice. A predator that no longer needs to attack. The spotlight flashes across the German submarine. Hold. 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 Then. It banks away. Not a bomb. Not a rocket. Just acknowledgement. For the first time, the crew exhales. Before we continue, drop a comment below and tell us, where in the world are you watching this from? Let's see how far this story reaches. Bargston stares at the fading aircraft, the reality finally settling in. A fleet of steel ghosts, over 150 U-boats, are surfacing right now across Europe. In fjords, in bays, in the open Atlantic. Each with a commander like him, caught somewhere between shame and relief. He grips the cold railing of the conning tower as the horizon begins to populate. A faint shape. Then another. Then 2 more. Allied destroyers. Grey. Silent. Approaching with the inevitability of history itself. U-2336 will soon join the others at Lyserly, the great mass graveyard of surrendered submarines. And Bargston will walk down the gangway not as a hunter of the Atlantic, but as a prisoner of a war that has devoured everything. But for now, in this moment suspended between peace and consequence, one question hangs heavier than the sea itself. What will the Allies do with the most advanced submarine fleet ever built? The salt wind of the North Atlantic still hasn't settled when we pull back to the wider world of May 1945, a world teetering between relief and dread. Germany has surrendered. Hitler is dead. And the oceans, once prowled by silent hunters, have gone eerily quiet. But this silence is deceptive. Beneath it lies a logistical nightmare, a geopolitical tinderbox, and the fate of the most advanced submarine fleet on Earth hanging in the balance. Across Europe, Allied commanders face a problem no one had prepared for. What do you do with an entire navy that suddenly stops fighting, overnight? More than 150 German U-boats are still scattered across the Atlantic, the Bay of Biscay, the Arctic Circle, and the fjords of Norway. These boats, responsible for nearly cutting Britain's lifeline during the war, now begin marching home in a strange, ghostly procession. They surface in sunlight they have not seen in weeks, sometimes months. Some limp toward Scotland. Others drift into Irish harbours, their crews gaunt, exhausted, confused. A few never make it, swallowed by storms or scuttled to avoid capture. This is not just the end of a war. It is the collapse of an entire underwater empire. Inside Allied command rooms, the mood changes from celebration to calculation. The U-boats are more than war trophies, they are blueprints of the future. The British want them. The Americans want them. And so does a rapidly rising force. The Soviet Union. The Type XXI and Type 23 submarines, sleek, streamlined, revolutionary, represent a technological leap so significant that they will shape submarine warfare for decades. The Cold War hasn't begun yet, but it is about to, and the U-boats are its opening move. Harbors overflow with surrendered boats. Engineers crawl over rusted hulls. Intelligence officers seize codebooks, torpedoes, snorkel systems, anything that reveals how the Germans built these machines. Crews are detained, interrogated, and held for months. Some, like the young sailors from Trondheim, try to understand what their future looks like. A few officers still cling to the remnants of the Kriegsmarine's honor. Most simply want to go home. But one figure towers over this moment, a man who understands exactly what is at stake.
Admiral Karl Dönitz.
Hitler's final successor. Former commander of the Untersee Bootwaffe. The architect of the Wolfpack strategy that terrorized the Atlantic. He knows the U-boat fleet cannot survive. But he also knows its secrets can. His final order, surface and surrender, has ended the shooting war. But it has triggered a new conflict. A scramble for control of the ocean's future. The eerie quiet after years of submarine warfare. The exhaustion and defeat of U-boat crews. The tense rivalry forming between former allies. The sense that the world has stepped into a new, uncertain era. Because just when the allies think the U-boat crisis is under control, they make a decision that will erase nearly an entire navy from existence and ignite decades of conspiracy, archaeology, and Cold War intrigue. And that decision is Operation Deadlight. The harbors of Lysoli, Loch Erebor, and Portland are choked with submarines. Their black hulls gleam dully in the morning sun, each boat a hollow testament to a war that has finally ended. Crews shuffle along the docks, dragging their gear, faces hollow from months of confinement beneath the waves. Silence dominates, broken only by the occasional clang of a mooring line or the distant cry of a gull. Among them, Oberleutnant Klaus Bargston, commander of U-2336, walks stiffly down the gangway. His coat is damp with Atlantic spray. His fingers are raw from gripping steel rails for weeks without relief. For the first time, he breathes freely, but freedom tastes strange. There is no cheering, no medals awaiting him, only uncertainty. He watches as Allied boarding parties swarm over his submarine, cataloguing every control panel, chart, and torpedo tube. Their eyes are hungry for knowledge, their questions relentless. Where is the snorkel system? An officer asks. How deep could you run submerged? Each question is a needle, each answer a wound to Bargston's pride. He knows that these interrogations aren't about justice. They're about power, control, technology. The Allies are not interested in honoring the fallen. They are studying the machines that once hunted their convoys. And they are not alone in this pursuit. Across Europe, the Soviet Union is watching, demanding a share of the fleet. The Cold War has not yet begun in name, but in spirit it is already here. Every Type XXI or 23 design captured, every secret valve or battery system uncovered, could shift the balance beneath the oceans. Admiral Karl Dönitz lingers in the shadows of surrender, aware that his final order, cease operations, surface immediately, has not only ended the war but preserved the secrets of his U-boat fleet. He watches as officers dissect his navy, knowing that some technologies could live on even as the hulls themselves face destruction. Dönitz is a strategist to the end, a man balancing honor and inevitability. Meanwhile, Allied officers, Royal Navy captains and US Navy engineers, move methodically. They log hull numbers, photograph interiors, seize anything of tactical value. Their minds are alive with calculations. Which boats to sink? Which to study? Which could alter the very nature of underwater warfare? Each officer carries the tension of the unknown, aware that one misstep could squander an unprecedented intelligence windfall. For the U-boat crews, Life has collapsed into monotony punctuated by fear. Some, like Barkston, are interrogated daily. Others languish, uncertain if they will ever see Germany again. The war is over, but the psychological toll lingers: defeat, shame, relief, and the haunting memory of those they sank in the final days of conflict. By late May 1945, the Allies face a single, urgent question. What do we do with these submarines? Keeping them afloat costs immense resources. Storing them indefinitely is impractical. The Soviet Union demands its share. Some boats are battle-worn, rusted, leaking, barely seaworthy. And yet, these steel predators represent the cutting edge of naval warfare. The Type XXI snorkel system, unprecedented battery capacity, hydrodynamic hulls, features that will shape submarines for decades. Each hull is a lesson in engineering brilliance. Allies debate, plan, and argue. Destroy them. Study them. Divide them. Every decision carries weight. Every action will echo far beyond the immediate post-war months. For the crews, the crisis is intimate and personal. Their lives, careers, and futures hang in the balance. For the Allies, it is strategic and global. And for history, the outcome will define the very future of underwater combat. By November 1945, the Allies had made their choice. The war was over, and the U-boat fleet would not survive. Over 100 captured submarines were corralled in British harbours: Lysahle, Loch Ryan, and Portland, each a dark monument to German naval ingenuity. Keeping them afloat was costly, dangerous, and strategically unnecessary. The solution: Operation Deadlight, a carefully orchestrated plan to sink most of the surrendered U-boats in the cold waters of the North Atlantic. The scale of the operation was immense. The Royal Navy designated 3 scuttling areas northwest of Ireland: XX, YY, and ZZ, locations chosen for deep water, isolation, and minimal risk to shipping. Tugboats were dispatched to haul the submarines hundreds of miles into the Atlantic. But the vessels themselves were far from cooperative. Many were battered by Allied bombing raids, months of unmaintained service, or deliberate sabotage. Hulls leaked. Ballast tanks failed. Engines refused to turn. Storms howled over the North Atlantic, threatening to claim the submarines before they reached their designated graves. Oberleutnant Klaus Barkston's U-2336 is among the doomed. Surrendered at Lysahle in June, it now faces the ocean one last time. The crew, long since released, watches from the docks as tugboats strain against lines. Barkston stands nearby, silent. The Atlantic wind bites, cold and relentless. He knows that the vessel he once commanded, that delivered the final blows to Allied shipping, will soon vanish beneath the waves. The first phase begins. A tugboat lurches, lines taut, hauling a submarine like a carcass. Some vessels sink prematurely, dragged down by weakened hulls or the rough winter seas. By the end of the operation, 56 boats will founder before reaching the scuttling zones. Others arrive, only to meet their fate at the hands of naval gunfire, aerial rockets, or explosives strategically placed along the hull. Steel screams as it buckles. Decks that once bristled with anti-aircraft guns now shudder and vanish into darkness. Among the notable victims, U-2336, the last U-boat to sink Allied vessels, goes under in January 1946. U-295, towed from Loch Ryan, sinks on the 17th of December 1945. U-2511, Germany's only fully operational Type XXI at war's end, is scuttled last on the 7th of February 1946. The operation is mechanical, methodical, almost clinical, but it is not without drama. Tugboat crews battle winter storms. Submarines, ironically, resist death. Some roll upright into the water, decks still armed, disappearing in moments. Others break apart on the tow, leaving twisted steel and oil slicks marking their passing. Each sinking is a quiet reminder: the war is over, but the ghosts of the Atlantic remain. Yet not all U-boats are doomed. A select few, particularly the advanced Type XXI and Type 23 boats, are spared for study. The Allies understand that these vessels represent the future of submarine warfare: long endurance, streamlined hulls, enhanced battery capacity, and the snorkel system enabling sustained underwater operations. Engineers from Britain, America, and the Soviet Union inspect every detail, reverse engineering German ingenuity. Some hulls are tested for depth charge resistance. Others serve as templates for post-war submarine construction. Operation Deadlight is more than a cleanup operation. It is a deliberate erasure. The Kriegsmarine's undersea empire, once a nightmare to Allied convoys, is reduced to rusting husks at the bottom of the Atlantic, a vast graveyard stretching across hundreds of nautical miles. But even as steel descends into cold silence, its legacy is far from over. These submarines, whether destroyed or preserved, will influence naval architecture, Cold War strategy, and the imagination of historians and archaeologists for decades. The Atlantic swallows another submarine. The tugboats pull back. The ocean returns to silence. And somewhere, beneath the waves, the ghosts of Germany's U-boat fleet wait, preserved in mud, steel, and memory. While most of the U-boat fleet vanished into the icy North Atlantic, a handful of submarines were spared, not for pride, not for honor, but for knowledge. The Allies knew that the German Type XXI and XXIII designs represented a revolution. Sleek hulls, enormous battery capacity, snorkels that allowed sustained submerged operations. These machines were a blueprint for the future of underwater warfare, and every navy wanted them. The first to claim their prizes were the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, guided by the Tripartite Naval Commission formed in August 1945. Each nation received 10 submarines for detailed study. Engineers and naval officers dissected every inch. Propulsion systems, silent running technology, periscope designs, torpedo tubes, even hull welds. In workshops from Portsmouth to New London, technicians crawled inside German submarines like surgeons examining a body, cataloguing innovations that would soon reshape submarine fleets around the world. Among the captured submarines, U-234 is extraordinary. Intercepted on the 14th of May, 1945 en route to Japan, its cargo is startling: uranium oxide, jet engine components, and advanced electronics. For the U.S. Navy, it is a trove of secrets. Engineers study every crate, every pipe, every schematic before eventually sinking the submarine during weapons tests in 1947. U-234 is a symbol of the dual nature of German engineering. Technological marvels that had served destruction, now fueling the next generation of military science. Across the Iron Curtain, the Soviets are quick to seize the most advanced boats. Several Type XXI submarines enter Soviet hands, dissected plate by plate in shipyards. From these, the Soviets developed their Whiskey-class submarines, a direct descendant of German ingenuity. Suddenly, Germany's once-feared wolfpack tactics have left a permanent mark, not on the seas of World War II, but on the waters of the Cold War. The West watches uneasily as former allies turn the spoils of war into a technological advantage, and naval intelligence begins plotting the next moves beneath Arctic ice. The Royal Navy integrates select boats for testing. U-3017, renamed HMS N-41, undergoes endurance trials before being scrapped in 1949. Canadian forces use surrendered U-boats, like U-190, as training platforms for sonar and torpedo exercises. In the United States, engineers meticulously study hulls and systems that will influence the design of post-war conventional submarines, laying the groundwork for a new era of silent, fast, and lethal underwater craft. France, Norway, and Denmark also reap benefits. U-123, renamed Blazon, serves in the French Navy, while Norway and Denmark adapt German technology for training and coastal patrol. The redistribution of these submarines, while framed as scientific curiosity, carries unmistakable geopolitical weight. Every hull transferred, every innovation studied, tightens the web of early Cold War strategy. Or at German engineering brilliance. Tension between former allies now entering a technological race. Unease at the rapid Soviet adoption of Type XXI technology. Triumph and discovery for engineers, juxtaposed with the eerie knowledge of the war's human toll. Even as the Allies celebrate their new knowledge, the oceans below remain littered with rusting skeletons. Operation Deadlight has claimed most of the fleet, but a few survivors linger, silent, preserved, waiting to tell their stories. These submarines, now tools of intelligence and prototypes for post-war fleets, will shape the Cold War and the future of naval combat. But what of the men who once crewed them? What of the lives, the battles, the personal costs that built these vessels? The story of the U-boat doesn't end with sinking or study. It continues in human memory, museums, and the hidden depths of the Atlantic. Decades pass, and the Atlantic's cold, dark waters keep their secrets. The majority of Germany's U-boat fleet remains entombed beneath waves off Northwest Island, a vast underwater graveyard stretching across hundreds of nautical miles. For years, these wrecks are forgotten, coordinates on Royal Navy charts, mere dots marking steel carcasses. But beneath the mud and silt, the U-boats wait, silent witnesses to a war that claimed 30,000 German submariners and countless Allied sailors. In the early 2000s, maritime archaeologist Innes McCartney leads expeditions that rediscover these wrecks. Using sonar and deep-sea photography, he identifies at least 14 intact hulls, upright, deck guns still visible, steel encrusted with coral and history. The Deadlight wrecks, once a methodical erasure of a navy, now provide historians and engineers with a rare glimpse into wartime design and hasty scuttling practices. Not every U-boat met its watery grave. Some were spared, preserved as symbols of history and technological achievement. U-995, surrendered at Trondheim, served briefly with the Norwegian Navy before returning to Germany in 1965. Today, it sits at Labo, near Kiel, a museum ship where visitors descend into the claustrophobic quarters of 45 men. U-505, captured in June 1944, was transported to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, the first enemy warship ever displayed on American soil. U-534, raised in 1993 from the Kattegat Strait, now displays cut sections revealing the cramped, mechanical interior of a German submarine. U-123, renamed Blazon, served in the French Navy before being preserved at Lorient, once a major Kriegsmarine U-boat base. Walking inside these vessels, visitors feel the weight of history, the tension of patrols in the Atlantic, the fear of depth charges, the camaraderie, and the losses of the crew. The submarines are more than machines. They are memorials to human endurance, ingenuity, and tragedy. The U-boat fleet was an empire of steel, perfected for stealth and destruction. But beneath the tactical brilliance lay the human story. Months in cramped, dark interiors, constant danger from Allied patrols, and the psychological toll of hunting and being hunted. Oberleutnant Klaus Bargston, commanders like him, and their crews were caught between duty and survival, victory and morality. Operation Deadlight erased the physical presence of most submarines, but it could not erase their influence. The innovations of the Type XXI, streamlined hulls, advanced batteries, snorkels, formed the foundation of post-war submarine design worldwide, influencing Cold War fleets from the Atlantic to the Pacific. In a sense, Germany's last wartime invention became the blueprint for the nuclear age. Reverence for the technological and human legacy of U-boats. Reflection on the lives lost and the endurance of survivors. Or at the rediscovery of the Deadlight wrecks. Tension between destruction, preservation, and memory. The Atlantic keeps its secrets, yet the U-boat story endures in museums, archives, and minds around the world. The steel that once hunted the oceans now rests in silence, teaching lessons of innovation, conflict, and the human cost of war. From surrender to scuttling, from study to preservation, the German U-boat fleet has left a dual legacy, one above water, tangible and educational, one below water, mysterious and haunting. For Bargston and countless others, the Atlantic is a reminder of choices, survival, and surrender. For historians and engineers, it is a treasure trove of knowledge. And for the world, it is a story of how machines of war can become instruments of memory, ghosts of steel resting between history and the sea. The U-boats have sunk, but their story still resonates in every hull studied, every museum visited, and every ocean wave that brushes their resting place.